The first time it happened, I thought I was losing my mind. It was just another Tuesday at the morgue. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I prepped for the day's autopsies. The smell of disinfectant hung in the air, masking the other, less pleasant odors that came with the job. I'd been working here for 3 years, and I thought I'd seen it all. Boy, was I wrong. As I pulled back the sheet on our first customer of the day, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair, I heard something. A whisper so faint I almost missed it. "Help me." I froze, scalpel in hand, and looked around. The morgue was empty except for me and the, well, not-so-living. "Hello," I called out, feeling stupid. Of course, no one answered. I shook my head, blaming it on lack of sleep, and turned back to the body. That's when I saw his lips move. "Car crash," the dead man whispered, his eyes still closed. "Texting and driving. Stupid, stupid, stupid." I stumbled backward, knocking over a tray of instruments. The clatter echoed through the room as my heart pounded in my chest. This couldn't be happening. Dead men don't talk. It's literally in the job description. But as I stood there, trembling, the corpse spoke again. "Tell my wife I'm sorry. Tell her I love her." I ran out of the morgue, slamming the door behind me. My colleagues found me hyperventilating in the hallway, babbling about talking corpses. They sent me home, told me to get some rest. "Stress-induced hallucination," they said. "It happens in this line of work sometimes." But I knew what I'd heard, and little did I know it was only the beginning. As I lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, one thought kept racing through my mind. What if the dead could really talk? And what secrets would they tell? I had no idea then how much my life was about to change, or how many more whispers I would hear in the days to come. I returned to work the next day, determined to prove to myself that I wasn't crazy. My colleagues eyed me warily, whispering behind my back. I didn't blame them. If I were in their shoes, I'd think I was losing it too. As I entered the morgue, my eyes immediately went to the drawer where yesterday's talker had been. It was empty now, the body released to the family. Part of me was relieved, but another part wished he was still here, just to confirm I hadn't imagined it all. I took a deep breath and approached the next body on my list. It was a young woman, probably in her early 20s. Long blonde hair, peaceful expression. Cause of death, unknown. My hands shook slightly as I prepared to begin the examination. Cleared my throat. "Hello," I whispered, feeling ridiculous. "Anyone home?" Silence. I let out a nervous laugh. "See?" I told myself. "It was all in your head. You're fine." "Aneurysm," came a soft voice. I nearly jumped out of my skin. The woman's lips hadn't moved, but I'd heard her as clear as day. It was so sudden," she continued. "I was just walking to class, and then, nothing." I stood there, frozen, as she kept talking. "My parents, they'll blame themselves. Please, tell them it wasn't their fault. There was nothing anyone could have done." I found myself nodding, even as my logical brain screamed that this was impossible. But how could I ignore her plea? Over the next few hours, I heard from 3 more of the deceased. An elderly man who died in his sleep. Best way to go, kid. Trust me. A construction worker who'd fallen from scaffolding. Always double-check your harness. For Pete's sake. And a middle-aged woman who'd lost her battle with cancer. It doesn't hurt anymore. Finally, by the end of my shift, I was a mess of emotions. Fear, confusion, and a strange sense of purpose. These people, these souls were trusting me with their final messages. How could I ignore that? But who would believe me? And more importantly, what was I supposed to do with this gift? Curse? Whatever it was. As I left work that day, I knew one thing for certain. My life would never be the same again. The dead were talking, and for better or worse, I was their listener. Little did I know, the most shocking revelation was yet to come. The next few weeks were a blur. I'd come to work each day, half dreading, half anticipating what I might hear. The voices never stopped. Sometimes they were clear as a bell, other times just faint whispers. But they were always there. I started keeping a journal, writing down every message, every plea, every confession. It felt wrong to keep these secrets to myself, but who could I tell? My coworkers already thought I was on the edge of a breakdown. If I told them the truth, I'd be out of a job faster than you can say, psychiatric evaluation. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a slow morning. Just one body on the slab, a man in his 30s, apparent heart attack. As I began the examination, I heard his voice. It wasn't a heart attack, he said, his tone bitter. It was murder. I froze. This was new. Most of the dead I'd heard from were either at peace or regretful. But this was anger. My wife, he continued. She poisoned me, slowly over months. Check my hair, my nails. You'll find the proof. My mind raced. If this was true, it wasn't just a message from beyond, it was evidence. But how could I explain sudden suspicions about a closed case without revealing my source? I did the tests anyway, discreetly, and sure enough, there were traces of arsenic. Levels far too high to be accidental. Now I had a real dilemma on my hands. I had information that could solve a crime, bring a killer to justice. But using it meant exposing my secret, risking everything. For days, I agonized over what to do. Couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. The weight of this knowledge was crushing me. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I anonymously tipped off the police, pointing them towards the evidence. They reopened the case, and within weeks, the man's wife was arrested. As I watched the news report of her being led away in handcuffs, I felt a mix of relief and terror. I'd done the right thing, hadn't I? But at what cost? That night, as I lay in bed, I heard a voice, not from a corpse this time, but in my head, clear as day. Thank you, the murdered man said. You've given me peace. I realized then that there was no going back. This gift, this curse, it was mine now. And with it came a responsibility I never asked for, but couldn't ignore. The dead were counting on me, and I couldn't let them down. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of my journey as the reluctant mediator between the world of the living and the secrets of the dead. As news of the miraculous solving of the arsenic murder case spread, things at work started to change. My colleagues looked at me differently, not with concern anymore, but with a mix of awe and suspicion. How had I known to run those specific tests? What made me suspect foul play in a seemingly straightforward case? I tried to brush it off, to act normal, but it wasn't easy, especially not when every body that came through our doors had a story to tell. One day, a young man was brought in victim of a gang shooting, according to the police report. As I prepared to examine him, his voice rang out, clear and angry. It wasn't a gang, he said. It was cops, dirty cops. They planted evidence on me, then shot me when I threatened to expose them. My blood ran cold. This was big, way bigger than anything I'd dealt with before. If true, it could bring down half the police department. But how could I prove it? And more importantly, should I even try? I spent nights tossing and turning, weighing the risks. On one hand, I had a duty to the truth, to justice. On the other, I was just one person against a potentially corrupt system. What if they came after me next? In the end, my conscience won out. Couldn't let this go. But I had to be smart about it. I started digging carefully, used my position to access records, asked subtle questions. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Other suspicious deaths, other cases that didn't quite add up. I was walking a dangerous line. By day, I was still the slightly odd but professional morgue technician. By night, I was piecing together a conspiracy that could shake the city to its core. Then came the warning. A body brought in late one night, apparent suicide. But as soon as we were alone, the dead man's voice filled the room. They're on to you, he said. The cops you're investigating, they know someone's digging. Be careful. They made me disappear. You could be next. Fear gripped me. I'd known the risks, but hearing it laid out so bluntly, it was terrifying. But I couldn't stop now. Too many voices were counting on me. Too many secrets needed to be brought to light. As I left work that night, looking over my shoulder with every step, I realized I'd crossed a point of no return. I wasn't just listening to the dead anymore. I was their advocate, their avenger, and I had no idea how dangerous that role would become. The next few weeks were a blur of paranoia and sleepless nights. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat, every passing car a potential tale. I was in over my head, and I knew it. But the dead kept talking, and I couldn't ignore them. One rainy Tuesday, they brought in a body that would change everything. A woman, mid-40s, apparent drowning victim. As I pulled back the sheet, her voice hit me like a tidal wave. "It was him," she gasped, as if still struggling for air. "My husband. He's going to hurt our daughter next. You have to stop him." My heart raced. This wasn't just about solving a past crime anymore. This was about preventing a future one. I worked frantically, searching for any evidence that might support a murder charge. But everything pointed to an accidental drowning. How could I convince the police to look deeper based on a whisper only I could hear? As I struggled with this dilemma, more bodies came in. More voices. More pleas for help. It was overwhelming. I hadn't had a full night's sleep in weeks, and the stress was taking its toll. My coworkers noticed. They tried to talk to me, to help, but how could I explain? "Sorry, I'm just a bit stressed from all the dead people talking to me." Yeah, that would go over well. Then came the night that pushed me to the brink. 3 bodies, 3 voices all at once. A car crash victim begging me to tell his girlfriend he loved her. A suicide demanding I clear his name of embezzlement charges. And worst of all, a child. A little boy no more than 6 crying out for his mom. I couldn't take it anymore. I broke down right there in the morgue, sobbing uncontrollably amidst the cold, steel drawers. The voices of the dead mingled with my cries, a cacophony of pain and desperation. That's how they found me, my boss and 2 concerned coworkers, huddled on the floor, talking to thin air, tears streaming down my face. I knew what it looked like. Hell, I knew what it was. I'd reached my breaking point. As they led me out, whispering words of comfort and concern, I heard one last voice. The drowning victim. "Don't give up," she pleaded. "You're our only hope." But how could I help anyone if I couldn't even help myself? As the doors of the morgue closed behind me, I realized I had a choice to make. Keep going down this path, risking my sanity and maybe my life. Or walk away, try to silence the voices and live a normal life. But could I live with myself if I chose the latter? I was given a mandatory leave of absence. 2 weeks to rest and recuperate, they said. But how could I rest when the voices followed me home? I spent days pacing my apartment, torn between the urge to help and the desire to run away from it all. The TV droned in the background, a futile attempt to drown out the whispers that haunted me. It was during one of these restless days that I saw it, a news report about a missing girl. My blood ran cold as I recognized her father. It was the husband of the drowning victim, the one she'd warned me about. In that moment, everything crystallized. Couldn't walk away. Not now, not ever. These voices, these spirits, they were counting on me. I was their link to our world, their last chance for justice or peace. I made a decision. If I was going to do this, I had to do it right. No more fumbling in the dark. No more solo crusades. I needed help. With shaking hands, I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd been avoiding for weeks. My sister, Sarah, a detective with the police department. "Hey, sis," I said when she answered, my voice cracking. "I need to talk to you. It's important. And you're probably not going to believe me." Over the next few hours, I poured out everything. The voices, the messages, the cases I'd helped solve. To her credit, Sarah listened without interruption, her face a mask of concern and disbelief. When I finished, there was a long silence. I braced myself for rejection, for her to call me crazy. Instead, she asked one question: the Riverside killer case last month, the anonymous tip that broke it wide open. "Was that you?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. Sarah leaned back, a look of wonder on her face. "I'll be damned," she whispered. Then, more firmly, "Okay, I'm in. Whatever this is, whatever you need, I've got your back." Relief washed over me. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. I wasn't alone anymore. As if on cue, the voice of the drowning victim whispered in my ear. "Thank you," she said. "Now let's save my daughter." With Sarah's help, we dove into the case. It wasn't easy, and there were moments I thought we'd fail. But a week later, we found the girl. Alive. Her father was arrested, and the truth about her mother's accident came to light. As I watched the reunion between mother and daughter on the news, tears streaming down my face, I realized something. This gift, this curse, it was a responsibility. One I was finally ready to bear. The dead still spoke to me, but now I had the means to truly listen and act. It's been a year since that pivotal moment with Sarah. A year of whispers, investigations, and uncovered truths. A year of learning to balance the world of the living with the voices of the dead. I'm back at work now, but things are different. My colleagues know about my gift. Some are skeptical, others fascinated. But they all respect the results. Sarah and I have developed a system. When a voice tells me something crucial, we work together to find evidence the traditional way. It's not always easy, and there are times when we hit dead ends. But more often than not, we bring closure to families and justice to those who thought they'd escaped it. The voices are still there, of course. Some nights they're overwhelming, a chorus of unfinished business and lingering regrets. But I've learned to manage it better. Meditation helps. So does knowing I'm not alone in this anymore. There are still challenges. The police department is wary of our methods, even with the results we've shown. And there are those who'd love to exploit my ability for their own gain. We have to be careful, always. But for every difficulty, there's a moment that makes it all worthwhile. Like the time we reunited a long-lost locket with a grieving mother, thanks to a whisper from her departed son. Or when we exonerated an innocent man on death row, guided by the true culprit's confession from beyond the grave. I've come to realize that this gift isn't just about solving crimes or uncovering secrets. It's about healing, bringing peace to both the living and the dead. It's a heavy responsibility, but one I'm honored to bear. As I stand in the morgue today, preparing for another shift, I can't help but smile. The cold steel tables and stark white walls used to feel oppressive. Now they're familiar, comforting even. A new body is wheeled in. I take a deep breath, ready to listen, ready to help. Because in this room, between the world of the living and the realm of the dead, I've found my purpose. The dead still tell me how they died, but now I can help them truly rest in peace. As I pull back the sheet, I hear the first whisper of the day. And I know whatever comes next, I'm ready for it. Because in this strange new normal, I've finally found where I belong.